Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Planning Board to order. See, we have a lot of public interest tonight. That's really a good thing, I would suppose. Oh, we'll find out. We'll begin with an opportunity for public comment. If there's something that you would like to say to the Planning Board and the public that is not on the agenda, this is the time when you would say it. If you're going to speak, and anyone who's going to speak, please come to the podium over there and speak into the microphone. That microphone is for purposes of FCTV, so that there are cameras around the room, so that people at home could hear what you have to say, and if you don't speak into the microphone, they won't be able to. These are not microphones for the room. They also are microphones for FCTV. So, is there anyone who has something they want to say before the meeting really gets going? Not. Okay, minutes?
Madam Chair, I recommend approval of the minutes of January 10th, 2023 with some very, very minor corrections.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Tonight, we're having something a little bit different. We're having a presentation by the Falmouth Housing Authority staff person, Bobby Richards, who is here to fill us in on the project-based program. And the reason for this is, as you know, the whole town is interested in getting much more affordable housing. So what we're trying to do is make information about that effort available. So, Bobby, thank you for coming, and if you could, please go to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cornock, for allowing me, on behalf of the Falmouth Housing Authority, to share information with you and with the esteemed members of the Planning Board. Thank you so much. It's an honor to come before you, and it's my first time coming before the Planning Board, so please be gentle. My name is Bobby Richards, and I'm the director of the Falmouth Housing Authority. And we are actually an important part of the conversation when it comes to affordable housing and development in the town of Falmouth. On our own, we contribute approximately 308 units of public housing. We're also pleased to share that we've earned an opportunity to extend additional funding for landlords of multi-housing projects and through our project-based program, and that's why I'm here tonight. So what is project-based funding? Project-based funding is a rental housing funding from the federal government that's attached to the unit itself. So through a contract, the owner designates certain units at the time of development as eligible for project basing. They can request up to 25% of their project to be project-based. This means that we can work with owners that have 4 or more units. Unlike traditional vouchers, many of you have heard of a Section 8 voucher, the difference is that the funding stays with the unit. It does not represent itself in the terms of a mobile voucher. So the owners through a contract are referred applicants from the Falmouth Housing Authority. We actually, through contract, maintain the waiting list for the owner or developer. And we would refer an applicant over. Our referral process involves income eligibility. There's certain criteria through HUD where you have to not earn over a certain amount of income based on the size of the household. We also run a background screening. We run for the CORI and for the SORI. Other than that, the landlord is able, through their own tenant selection plan, which is part of their application process, to provide further screening criteria that they handle on their end. It's really important to understand that the relationship for a project-based contract it's interesting. The Housing Authority has a relationship with the landlord directly. And then the landlord is actually, of course, the landlord for their tenant. So even though that tenant was our applicant, our responsibility to the tenant outside of their relationship with housing rules was really restricted to the lease between the landlord and the tenant. So we don't get involved if there's a legal dispute. The Housing Authority is not a party to that particular contract. But if we know that there's something going on, our goal is always to maintain the housing. And so we will ask the owner if we can step in and perhaps try to mediate between the two parties so that if they have to separate, we can still maybe find additional housing for the particular voucher holder or the certificate eligible. The really great thing for a person that moves into a project-based unit that's unusual is that if they have a great tenancy with their landlord, and if the Housing Authority has extra Section 8 vouchers at the end of a 1-year period, then that person may be eligible to actually get a mobile voucher. So what are the benefits for a landlord? Well, you get a 60-day vacancy payment, and it is exactly what it sounds like. If a person moves out, we will pay you for 60 days of that unit being empty. So the day that the unit is made available, if we have not sent you another applicant, then you will continue to get funding on that unit for 60 days. So that seems to interest many developers. The tenants also would come to you through the referral from us, so we do our best to screen them well up front. We are bound by the type of screening that we can do, but we certainly encourage and will discuss different screening options that have worked well with other landlords, with any landlord that's interested in this particular program. We want you to know that vouchers are distributed based on the amount that the Housing Authority's earned. And because we've done so much work, especially in the last few years, of requesting and putting vouchers out on the street, they've resulted in us earning project-based opportunities. So that's why we're coming before you today. We have earned the right to request 36 vouchers, and that's what's getting ready to go out through an RFP that releases on this Friday. It's a 60-day response period, so we're asking for any developer that's even in the planning stages. If you have a property that's coming up and you are looking to get some relief on financing, because of course through this particular program, some of the overhead, when you're doing your own separate financing, you can discuss if there's any relief through that process on your end, because most of these projects do include utilities being paid, or there's a certain amount that we give as an allowance towards a family when they have to pay utilities on their own. So it is a great program for both the landlords and for the tenants. So I know that's a very quick overview. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
That was quick, and I'm not sure I took it all in. Tell me how that intersects with 40B. If there are 40Bs planned, how do they fit together?
So my understanding, because at the Housing Authority, we're a quasi-municipality, so we don't really pay attention very much to the 40B process because we already have our own units of public housing. My understanding is that our units count, and anybody that comes before you and are approved through a 40B process, their units would count as well. We're more interested in the finance end of it in terms of helping give those developers some type of relief by allocating specific units. So say you had a 20-unit building that you had proposed and it went through this process and you were going to build. If you came to us and you had applied at this time and you said, I'd like to project-base 25% of those units, you are telling the town and the community that we are guaranteeing that these apartments, letters A through D, are always going to be project-based, which means they are always going to be affordable. They're really pre-allocated to work with people where their incomes fall within a certain income range. So it's a guarantee. And the contracts that we write are anywhere between 5 and 20 years in length.
I think 40B developers already they're going to build a large enough project that 25% have to be affordable, and they have to already go by those guidelines. This sounds like another funding source for them, is that right? So that rather than they're donating that, the federal government's going to put money into it.
That's true. Because 40B is a state program, it's coming through HUD for the project basing. So it's a separate funding stream, but my understanding is that they get some type of credits if they decide to apply through this particular program. We've had landlords that move the units, so if something happens to one unit, as long as you allocate another one during the contract period, we're just interested in you maintaining a certain number of units in accordance with your contract. And I don't know how many people are aware, but HUD has reevaluated the area. So the rental rates have significantly changed, and Falmouth is actually separated from a lot of the other housing authorities on the Cape in that the federal government has determined that the rentals and the rates that they will pay are at 100% of the fair market values. The fair market values for this area, according to HUD, are pretty low. Falmouth and its board actually voted 110% above that number. And so we are actually on the Cape, we're the highest paying housing authority for landlords at this moment.
Going through my head while you were saying this, the minimum is 4 units to be able to become involved in that.
Correct.
And only one can be this project-based, or can you also determine that you might want 2 that are project-based?
So when it's a small number, you can request that we consider to give you 2 out of the 4. It's all part of the application that you submit, what you're requesting from us. Our goal is to diversify the number of projects that are done in the community, of course. So we are not looking to give a full 36 allocations to one entity. We're really hoping to get a number of applications that we can split that 36 up.
Paul?
Did you say you had 300 units on the facility on Scranton Avenue?
We have 308 throughout the town. We have 25 houses. In our state program, we have 54 units. In our federal program, we have 222 units. And then we have a group home that's located off of Rosemore Lane that actually has 8 rooms, and so they count those as 8 units. So that totals about 308 or 309.
The facility on Scranton Avenue, how many units are in there?
We have 2 facilities on Scranton Avenue, so is it the brick building you're asking about, or is it the cottage ones down at the end of the street?
I'm just curious, how old are those units?
Those are built in the 80s, mid-80s.
I thought they're 40, 50 years old.
They are. I
understand funding may be available for upgrades and expansion. Is there any effort of Housing Authority to look at those areas?
I'm constantly searching for grants. I've spent a lot of my time searching for grants to improve our properties. I'm not sure if you're aware, but we actually received the highest grant in the state of Massachusetts for an emergency grant where we were fixing our pipes, and that was a grant that was over $3 million. And that's actually split between the Harborview property and our property on Tatticket. On 138T Ticket, which is our Tatticket property.
Thank you.
And may I also just share that we are looking to start work on our Tatticket property, but our grant was put in before COVID was announced. It was actually granted, I believe, January of 2020. And after COVID, all the prices raised. So what happened was we finished our Harborview project, and now we're going back to HUD for additional money so that we can finish the Tatticket one.
Pam?
So Bobby, one of my, nice to see you.
Hi.
One of my concerns is that as some of these units become more and more decrepit, which is how they're looking, what happens to those? I mean, they're in the ownership of the housing authority, but what happens when they are just almost uninhabitable?
So are we talking about the project-based program, or are we talking about housing authority units in general?
I don't care. I mean, I'm just
So a
concerned.
project-based would be a separate landlord. It's not, the housing authority does not serve as the landlord on a project-based opportunity. That is a developer in town who's either building new or redeveloping older units. The units have to pass housing quality standards as set by HUD. So that's something that happens before a lease-up can occur, and then it also happens annually. So when we have a unit that fails, and it's a private developer, we work with that developer to, and we use an outside inspection company for objectivity. And the landlord has a responsibility to maintain the unit and bring it back up to par, or they could put themselves in a position to lose their contract.
And what happens with the housing authority unit?
So the housing authority will transfer a tenant if it's an issue that we can't resolve. We will go in and fix the unit if it's an issue that, we can fix. So we have some options to move tenants within buildings, and we've done a few of those in recent years.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
John?
Do you have a waiting list or a voucher system? How do you work your tenants?
So we have for our project base, that would be that would be a waiting list system. So one of the benefits of this program is you don't have to look for your own applicants. They join a waiting list. And we actually already have a waiting list for project-based units because there are a few in the community currently. We have 45 through the Falmouth Housing Corporations. And we also have another 71 that came through an emergency process with HUD for the Cape Cod Apartments. So we're adding another 36 to be divided between other organizations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bob? Jim? Nope. That's really interesting. You're running a large operation. They're larger than I actually was aware of.
Thank you.
So I think maybe the units that Pam was concerned about are the cottage units. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah,
So the cottage units on Scranton, we have cottage units on Lakeview, and we have cottage units on Rosemorin. Scranton.
Yeah.
So I'm really pleased to share that at our 211, which I believe are the ones you're talking about closest to the harbor and the beach, that's our Salt Sea Apartments. We're very grateful to Representative Vieira and Susan Moran for really fighting for us through the ARPA funding, and we actually just received, we got allocated, we haven't received it yet, about $350,000, I want to say, somewhere around there, $350,000 that we can put towards those properties. ARPA funding, I don't think is going to be released for a few months. We're also very happy that the town of Falmouth has agreed with our position that all of the units need a really comprehensive needs assessment. As was indicated earlier, we're working with a very old portfolio. The Housing Authority came online in 1948, and some of our buildings, like the Scranton one that you're referring to, as well as Rosemorin and the property on Lakeview, I think they're as old as the early 60s. So these are units that have definitely stood the test of time, need a lot of love and attention, and those are, except for the Rosemorin, which was federalized about 10 years ago, those are state units. So we have to work with DHCD in order to present a project, get the project approved, and they don't always agree with our timing on when we like things done, so sometimes it can be a frustrating process. We wish we could just go out and do something in the unit, but it has to go through a lot of channels before that happens when it's a full-on building project. For the $350,000 that we received, we are going to be replacing the windows, which are very difficult to open at that particular property. However, we've been informed, and I've done some outside comparables, that to replace the windows at that particular property, even though we got $350,000, are actually closer to $500,000. So finding the other money always becomes the challenge. So we end up doing half a property when that's not really the approach we want to take. And it's frustrating for the tenants that live there, but that's the way the funding comes down the stream. So we're always looking for grant money.
I think that's all the questions the board has. Does the public have any questions, as long as the opportunity's here? No. Bobby, thank you very much.
You're
This has
welcome.
been
Thank you
very
so much for your
helpful.
time, and I hope that developers do apply starting Friday.
Well, I hope they hear about it soon. You'll have
Thank
other
you.
ways of telling them, too. Thank you. Okay, moving on. This is an approval not required plan. The applicant is Dover Mill LLC, a plan of land to reshape Lot A and Lot 0 with no change in the area located at 433 and 0 Davisville Road. Who is speaking for that project?
Matthew Smith, manager for Doverville LLC. Good evening. For the record, I'm Matthew Smith, manager of Doverville LLC. And this is a approval not required plan to reshape. I'm going to do this. But basically to reshape, should I touch this?
It's a mouse.
It's a
Pull out
mouse.
the drawer.
Underneath.
Aha. Got it. So this existing dotted line is Lot 0, as currently recorded at the Registry of Deeds. And this solid straight line is for the reshaping of Lot 0, which consequently results in the reshaping of Lot A. Lot A remains the same area, and Lot 0 remains the same area of 11,880 square feet. Both lots have the conforming 100 feet minimum frontage on a planning board endorsed way, which is Commodore Lane. That was endorsed by the planning board and recorded on Plan 270-14, which was submitted for the public record. And the three existing lots, Lot A, Lot 0, and Lot B, are also recorded at the Registry of Deeds on Plan 698, page 70. And this is under zoning Article 11.1A2, which states that as long as the lot area does not change, you don't lose any pre-existing zoning status. Now, obviously, zoning is the purveyance of the zoning board, but my intention here is not to create further problems for anyone. But again, it is on a planning board endorsed way, frontage of 100 feet. The topography shows that vehicular access is readily available. It's really like 1 or 2 feet of grade for the whole area. So I'll open it up if there's any questions to the board.
Questions? Any? Appears not. It's all one owner. It meets all of the requirements for frontage and for access. It's on an approved way. And certainly, we're ready for a motion to endorse.
So moved.
I move that we endorse this plan without regard to buildability.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you. Or
Thank you for your
endorsed,
time.
excuse me. Okay, next. The applicant, Blue Moon Sea Grill Incorporated. It's for a special permit application to allow lot coverage of 73.8% to accommodate the restaurant dining deck proposed along the southeast side of the existing building located at 159 Main Street. This is our 4th time?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, that we have been looking at this applicant's request. Does the applicant have anything further to say?
Good evening. I'm Bob Ament, attorney for the applicant Blue Moon Sea Grill, Inc. We really went through a lot of information at our last hearing a couple of weeks ago. The planning board asked us to provide a few items. In response to those requests earlier this week, we submitted a revised site plan, which is the plan that's before you. It shows the proposed dumpster location that's located behind the restaurant building or proposed restaurant building, and with fencing to screen the area that's behind the restaurant. In addition, the plan has shown the removal of the concrete walkway, the short walkway from the town's long sidewalk, and that's the walkway that leads into the present way. So that, of course, would be removed and become part of the landscaping on the town property, subject to approval by the Select Board and working with the DPW regarding those plantings. We also submitted a revised floor plan and elevations prepared by Petro Architects. And Melinda, is that here to show?
Yes, scroll down. Oh, if you scroll, say it up.
Just scroll down. Thanks for your help. Okay. Thank you. And that's the plan that's in front of you. What this plan shows is a wall to be constructed at this area at the southeast end of the deck. And there would be a wall with a gate in it before the steps going down to the rear of the property. And here's where that would be located, the wall along here, the gate here. And the purpose of that is to enclose sound and be a buffer to the residential neighbors at 137 Main Street. It would also be a visual barrier as well. So that we were asked to respond to how we might mitigate for concerns about noise, and we can put that that wall there. We submitted also correspondence from Gordon Food Services, which would provide not only the food but also other restaurant supplies. They presently service a couple of the other restaurants on Main Street, and they would service this restaurant, and they say that their deliveries would be at 6 o'clock in the morning when there is virtually no parking or traffic, either on Main Street or in Town Hall Square. So I think we could say that the deliveries to the restaurant will not be a problem in terms of traffic, in terms of parking, and they will be in Town Hall Square or on Main Street in the parking spaces, and there will be no deliveries from the rear, which is something that neighbors have been thought might happen and would be concerned. But we submitted to the board proposed conditions that would include a condition that specified that their deliveries not be in the rear of the building. We also submitted a memo from Horiuchi and Celine Landscape Architects that provided more detail about the possible plantings, and we were asked to do that as well. That memo includes some photographs of the plantings that are proposed. The landscaping would be maintained by the restaurant. They maintain their landscaping at other restaurants that they operate. So they have a landscaping company that does that. Now, this landscaping would all be on town property. All of these plans and the maintenance obligations would be subject to approval by the town. A license would be obtained from the town, and I'm sure we'd have discussion with the DPW and the Select Board about that. But the end result and the purpose is to beautify the that corner of Town Hall Square, which can use it, which will benefit the public visiting town and also people who are dining at this restaurant. We submitted also to town proposed findings and conditions about trash collection. We had submitted previously a letter from Cavosa Disposal saying that the restaurant would not require any more trips for collection or any bigger trucks that already for some 40 years have been picking up trash from the rear. I'd point out, however, and we've thought a bit about this, if for any reason we couldn't collect the trash from the rear, other arrangements could be made. The trash could be properly stored underneath the deck or even inside the building and regularly picked up perhaps every morning, early in the morning before anybody is parking in Town Hall Square. There are ways to deal with that. So that's the additional information that we have submitted to the board. We think we've really answered questions. Other than trash pickup, there be no impact whatsoever on the rear of the 145 and 131 Main Streets or on 137 Main Street. And the trash is the same as it's been for decades. We are interested in what the opinion from town council is that we understand that the planning board has. It's important for us and the public to know the basis on which the planning board may make its decision. And I hope that the planning board will vote to release the town council's opinion and provide a copy to us tonight. We had hoped that the board would make decisions tonight on both site plan review and on the special permit for lot coverage. As the chairman pointed out, this is the fourth meeting. We have provided some information recently, but it's what was requested and answers questions. As you know, we need to obtain a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. They've had to continue their hearing with each continuance of the planning board because they need a site plan review decision to issue their special permit. I don't know if the planning board is prepared to vote tonight. I know that the agenda from the notes put together by the town planner suggest that he may not feel the board is ready, but I thought that the board was ready at its last meeting to make a decision in this case. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to answer the question about the town council, assistant town council, actually, opinion letter first. I think everybody wants to know what happened with that, and I certainly wanted to know what happened with that. And I had a conversation with, including the board, who doesn't know yet, a conversation with Brian Tobin, who is the new assistant town planner. He's a very experienced lawyer. He was town planner. No, he was assistant
Excuse me.
town council.
Okay. New assistant town planner, was confused.
Apparently I was also. I meant town council. We have a new town council. We have a new assistant town council. It's a whole new crew over there. And this is really our first exchange with Brian Tobin. He is experienced. He's been a town council for Needham, which is a good-sized community. He spent 5 years doing that. He's worked for a developer in between, and now he is here, and we are learning about him. And I think the first thing to say is that we did not see the written thing that he had sent us until immediately before the board met a couple of weeks ago. And we were quite caught by not by what he said, but by the heading on the document that he gave us, because it was very unfamiliar to me. I had never seen it. Pat apparently has seen similar things. I guess if you have had dealings with lawyers, you're accustomed to it, but I was not, and it cautioned us about confidentiality. So that came up as an issue here. What does this mean? We just got this, we haven't had time to absorb it, and here's this thing, confidentiality. What does that mean? And so I have learned from Mr. Tobin what that means. It turns out that the town council and the town assistant council, they are not lawyers to the town at large. They are lawyers really only to the town as represented by people who work for it and who are part of town government. So anything that they give to us as an opinion is covered by attorney-client privilege. And apparently protecting attorney-client privilege, maybe not in this matter, but in many matters, it's a very important thing to do. And once you lose it, it's very hard to get it back. So the advice of Mr. Tobin, based on that, was don't share it. Just don't give up attorney-client privilege. You don't need to. And so his advice to us is not do it. So now that the board all knows the same thing, any reactions? Oh, also, he was quick to say, you can if you want to. As a board, you have the authority to do it, but he thinks that we should not do it. And that was his biggest reason for not doing it. So what do you think?
I agree with him.
John?
I don't agree with that at all, no. These are public hearings, and you have applicants that whatever it is, the applicant is very important to them, and to not be able to counteract the advice we get from our town council, I think that's unfair to the applicant.
Jim?
I'm okay with the confidentiality.
Pat?
So am I.
Okay, and releasing it or not releasing it?
No, that it is for us.
We shouldn't release it.
Should not release, okay. I
We
didn't
shouldn't
know
set
that.
the precedent of
Confidentiality,
releasing
yes.
it, yeah.
I initially raised the, last time, that I didn't feel comfortable. I don't see a change at this time.
Pam?
I have mixed feelings about it. I think there are times when it's very important to disclose certain information and times when it's irrelevant. And I think it really is almost on a case-by-case occurrence, because I think there are times when the public needs to know what the opinion of town council is before going further. So,
Okay, here's what I think. I think in this particular case, when there's a good chance this might go to court, it might not, I certainly hope that it doesn't, that there is an amicable resolution to whatever issues there may be. But were it to go to court, we would be in a better position if we do not share this. Not because of what it says, just because of a precedent that we would set. And it would affect other things that would come before us also, that precedent. So I'm persuaded by Mr. Tobin. Although, like John, I really don't like that. But that's the way it would go. It sounds as if we brought this to a vote, we would not be sharing it. Is that more or less your sense of it?
It'd be 5-2.
It would be 5-2.
And there may be a
So,
time in the future, depending on what legal action occurs, that could be part of
it could be,
some part of the package that both sides would know about.
yeah. That's where we are on that. So we're not sharing that. So on the matter itself, does anyone on the board need more information? Pat?
Okay. Considering that we just got this package yesterday, I didn't see it until this afternoon, all the information in it. And considering that we got something.
That package from Mr. Iment.
Correct. And considering that we just got a letter to the planning board from Gary Street,
The building
the
commissioner.
building commissioner. Although, if I stood up, I would say, this foot is planted firmly in, I think it's going to be a real benefit to the town. But this foot is planted in, I think we should give our staff the benefit of being able to craft a very strong decision with all of the parts and pieces. And so we should give them until the next meeting to craft the decision. I don't know if I can state it more clearly, or if that was a confusing way
I
of doing
understood
it.
that. Paul or Pam?
Fine with that.
You're fine with that, so, well, and I am too. We now have built up quite a file on this, and first of all, I would like to thank very much Attorney Emmett and his staff for all the information they've given us on this. It's been a long haul. We have heard now from just about all of the town offices that get to weigh in on this, so that we know that our safety concerns were addressed by the fire department. We know that our drainage concerns have been addressed. We know that all the concerns that we raised have been addressed. But there are still some outstanding issues around the easement question, and we're waiting on that. So we are going to request, oh, Jim?
I just, you use the term easement. Do we have an easement here, or is it legally, I don't think we heard an easement before. I think this is a way. And I believe there's a difference between that.
There is.
And I just want to make sure we're using the right terminology.
But we
as
know
we're-
we are not the board that determines that would
No,
go to
but is there
court.
an easement, or is there a way?
It's an excellent question. I've heard both. I've heard the way, and people have rights to the way. I'm
But
not
is
a
there an
practicing
easement?
attorney.
Is there a deed that says this is an easement?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, because I looked it up, and I couldn't find an easement.
However, there is an understanding that the way has
A
some
way's a
property
different
rights.
story, I understand. I was just,
Again,
the terminology been thrown around here, I was just making sure we're all saying the same thing. I agree if it's an easement, but if it's a way, I disagree. So just the terminology is all I was,
Well, what I'm proposing is a continuance until just the next meeting.
I'm okay
one
with the
more meeting.
continuance. I just wanted to make sure, are we saying there's an easement?
We are not saying any such thing.
I thought you did, so I'm
No.
fine.
Yeah, she misspoke.
I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm all
So,
set.
thank you. We're looking for continuance. So are you moving for the continuation?
I'm fine with going ahead,
There
but I
is
just
one other problem, too.
changed with the words.
Because it was brought up that if anybody had to get back there, any kind of emergency vehicle had to get back by the way that they're going to collect the trash, they may not be able to do it. And sure enough, I drove by today and there was a UPS truck blocking the entrance.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow that's going to have to be taken care of, whether it's an overhanging sign, do not park here, something to keep a UPS vehicle, and maybe it's only the UPS vehicle, or maybe it's other vehicles, I don't know. The UPS driver, they have their routes, and you can say, hey, don't do it anymore. Because if you've got a UPS vehicle parking there and they're off down the street someplace and chit-chatting, who knows how long they're gonna be blocking that, and somebody's having a heart attack back there? It could pose a problem, so I'd like to see some solution to that if possible. A suggested solution.
That wouldn't have to do with this decision.
No, it wouldn't, sorry. But,
I just wanted to make sure that
yeah, I
everyone's
wanted to
aware
make
of
sure too, because, well, it had been brought up in this context too. So that's why I said that, even though it's not part of what we can decide upon.
So, did you make a motion? Move for continuance?
No,
Oh, well, would you?
no.
Pat?
Madam Chair, if I may, you still have an open hearing. I don't know if you wanted to.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, we need to
entertain
close the hearing first.
Comments from the public
Yeah.
or
Before you close
to
the
that
hearing,
degree.
please.
Yeah, John?
You recognize Mr. Ahmed's efforts here to educate us and state their position. I think we should do the same for the neighbors and their counsel. They presented quite a case.
You're right. That was really rude of me. I'm sorry.
I think you got sidetracked with
I did.
way or easement.
I didn't mean to. And I guess we're not quite ready to close the hearing. Is there anyone from the public who can offer something we haven't heard before? Something new?
I would love to try to address something new. Mary Downey for the Abutters in the Way. There have been new documents produced, and I do have a little slide bit, but I'll forego that for now. But I just want you to see that where the dumpsters will be now are underneath the deck, and that's a fire hazard. It will also be that it's all in a flood zone, that entire back, which I think, Mr. Ahmed, do you have that plan on here? Do you have that plan that you submitted today, yesterday on here? Is that something? Okay. If you can scroll back,
It's really easy.
I'm learning. Okay. So, and then my finger is the mouse? Is that what it is?
Oh, there's a mouse there.
Oh, there's a mouse. Yep. So you can see Main Street here, and that the flood zone right abutting Town Hall Square goes all the way across this property, all where the dumpsters will be. There was a pond there yesterday from the rain, and it's a serious concern. I would also, just for the record, like the board to know that my clients also would like and do agree with Mr. Ament, our attorney Ament, that the letter from town council should be released. I just want that for your record. And town council doesn't just work for the planning board. They do have to report to the town, and we see all of the litigation that goes on over there. So we should have a situation where we're not speculating as to what town council has said. And I know they're new, but it doesn't seem appropriate at all. We see some potential here for, and I do have another photograph from the GPS that shows the storefront for Vincent. And that is, he has 3 storefronts. He doesn't have to block the way. And all of this beautification of the corner is wonderful. I think it would look lovely if it were not blocking the way. And it is a way. There are prescriptive easements that we believe we can prove in land court or superior court, wherever we end up, and that the planning board has no authority to block a way. You cannot block a street, you cannot block a road, and you are taking it upon yourself to block the way. And everyone's turning a blind eye to that who votes for this. It defies common sense. Access is number one. Access in this situation, we have perfect access on both sides. And Mr. Bogosian is a magician when it comes to building. Let him fix the way so that it's more accessible, and then he can have his dumpsters. How is he going to do this construction on site? That's another one of your bylaws. You're absolutely throwing the gavel in with the applicant and just letting them have it, whatever they want, and it goes against your bylaws, your site plan bylaws and your special permit bylaws. By granting this approval, you have gone against all of your own bylaws. You're not supposed to violate any of the bylaws by what you're suggesting that you can do here. And this idea that you're going to bring deliveries through the front door, or you're going to have one vendor who says, oh, we'll come at 6 o'clock in the morning. They are delivering to 2 other sites on Main Street who have rear access, the French bakery and the Italian grocer. So it's disingenuous to say that this can be serviced at 6 o'clock in the morning. They're going to have one vendor truck, one for a 130-seat restaurant? Not possible. Trash removal, it's not going to be the same. It's going to be a huge dumpster in a flood zone. And you're talking about removing once a week? That's absolutely, doesn't make any common sense. I would ask, too, that in the event that you do approve this plan, that the board make a formal statement that you are blocking a way, an established way for over 100 years. 1910 is the one that you're blocking. 1926 is the one that everyone will have to use with no alternative way. The other concern that we still have is that there was a site visit on December 1st, but that the board, through the chairman, sent a letter on November 12th telling ZBA to approve the parking waiver, a 100% parking waiver on a 130-seat restaurant. The traffic congestion has never been addressed. No one has done a real study. What you have in your paperwork is simply some basic numbers that are throughout the country, not Main Street in July or August, and you must apply peak times to that traffic study. This proposal is a house of cards. We have some licenses, maybe they're handshakes, but they're not reasonably recorded. And we also have parking at Windfall. Windfall has a ferry service that they own, that they put their cars there. It makes absolutely no common sense here to block this way and allow for the congestion and the chaos that will happen. This is somewhat of an urban renewal sort of plan from what I can see. Blue Moon could have their own means of access, egress, and ingress as an alternative right from Town Hall Square. But also, what's happening to the handicap spots? They seem to have disappeared from this recent plan. So I thank you for your consideration and that you will review this somewhat contorted plan that's trying to make its way through the bylaws, but it doesn't fit. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Dowling, this was on the special permit, which is just about the increase of, what, 4% of the, no, don't bother to get up. I'm just trying to say, your points also apply to the site plan.
Yes.
Right, so that at the last meeting, it confused all of us, getting them mixed together, so I'm not surprised. There's still that, but we won't have to go through it again next time. Yes.
Good evening. Jerry Millett, one of the owners of 137 Main Street. Just like to read something into the record. In the view of 137 Main Street Condo Association, the many people that signed and continue to sign our petition opposing the extinguishing of a public access way for private commercial use, I would like to highlight a few points based on the latest Town of Falmouth zoning bylaws as of November 2022. The purpose of the bylaws, Section 240-1.1A, intent and purpose is to protect the community, to lessen congestion in the streets, to secure fire safety, to prevent overcrowding of land, and to conserve the value of land and buildings, and to prevent blight. Next bylaw I'd like to cite is, in addition, building permits, Section 240-21B, shall not be issued to build a new structure, the outside deck, if the building of any structure is on any lot with a public way, a way shown on a plan, a way in existence. Hewens Way is a public access point. The building permit, Section 240 of the bylaws, goes on to discuss the needs of the land abutting thereon in full disclosure of the exact location and buildings already existing on the lot together with streets and alleys adjacent to. Hewens Way clearly is a street and alley adjacent to. The restaurant proposed at 159 Main Street is over large site and therefore is attempting to take over a public access street or alley. There are no so-called licenses to be given to a public road. There is no legal standing to take over an alley or a permanent deck. The deck blocks the way. The restaurant has no parking. Why has the application for an oversized restaurant deck proposal with no parking and no access to delivery, livery, adequate fire and safety access gone this far? Parking alone should have caused the town to reject this application. The property developer and his client should have been asked to revise and scale down the design plans, keeping with the community and historic Main Street and the needs of residents and business owners. We see no action taken to preserve the historic area of Main Street from the overdevelopment with long-term planning. Long-term planning is the key. We see no technical studies, parking or otherwise, related to the impact or feasibility of constructing an oversized bar and restaurant on this site. 130 seats plus 40 employees is the same size as the 99 Esti Osteria La Civetta, Flying Bridge, La Cucina, and all the Falmouth restaurants with dedicated parking. All Main Street restaurants should be subject to the same standards. Our historic area of Main Street for many years enjoys heavy foot and car traffic. A restaurant of this scale and size with no parking should in fact be illegal. Everyone we have spoken to who has signed the petition is shocked to learn the size and scale of this proposal overtaking a public access alleyway. Again, along with the total lack of dedicated parking, the next issue is the blocking of a permanently obliterating an access road with a 100-year-old tradition of community use. A deck is pretty and welcome on Main Street, no doubt, but not an inappropriate site over a public access road. There is a curb cut. Why not put the deck on Main Street in this case? Why is this panel willing to give away public space under questionable license agreements? The deck is too large and will permanently block an existing driveway enjoyed by the community. This is not an upgrade. If permitted, this would be overreaching in a new use of building and change of use of land in violation of the bylaws. When you buy a car, you always look under the hood. We don't understand why the Planning Commission is not looking more thoroughly at the technical aspects of this oversized project. One pretty architectural rendering is merely a wish list. One deep-pocketed property developer who has the highest number of outstanding incomplete building projects in Falmouth should not be dictating the renewal of Town Square. Thank you.
You're welcome. That also would apply more to the site plan than to this issue we're looking at, but we hear it, we realize they're very much connected. Mr. Ament, is there anything you wish to respond to that?
I've thought all along during this process, as there have been references to the petition that was just referred to, that I'd sign the petition too, if it was a public access way, in quotes, that was being blocked. But it isn't. And no matter how many times Attorney Downey or our clients say so, it doesn't make it an easement right that her clients have. They have not been able to produce any recorded document to support their position, so they're left with the idea that maybe they have a prescriptive easement, which requires a minimum of 20 years of uninterrupted, continuous use. We don't think they have that. They haven't provided the evidence to support that. And we don't think that the planning board should make decisions based on unsupported claims, not supported by the record of easement rights. We have a right to put a chain across that way. We have a right to put a gate across that way. We have a right to put a dumpster in that way. And because the people who do have rights to that way have both signed licenses recorded at the Registry of Deeds allowing this deck, we have a right to put the deck there. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to read into the record at this time something that was sent to us by the Building Commissioner and Zoning Compliance Officer, Gary Street, that we received today. Dear Planning Board, in reference to 159 Main Street, building a deck within a right-of-way, there shall not be a structure blocking the way, and he puts little air quotes around way, as shown on the existing and proposed site plans, until decision by a court of law has determined that the applicant has the legal right to do so. And it would be up to Mr. Street to enforce that. We have been saying now for 4 meetings, this is really not our issue. Is it new? Going to say something new?
Yes. Thank you. I didn't see that note from Gary Street, which came today to the planning board, until after 4 o'clock this afternoon.
We got it.
I have the greatest respect for Gary Street. I think the town is fortunate that he's become our building commissioner. He is wonderful to deal with in a very important and demanding role. But I think he's wrong in this case, and I'm not sure what he's saying. Is he saying that we can't build in the area marked way, on certain plans because it will block someone's rights. Therefore, is he saying we can't put a gate there? That's not a building department issue. Can we put a chain there? Can we put the dumpster there, and so on? And if we were to have a gate there, who would we have to allow to have access through that gate? Does he decide that? Do we have to allow people who don't have rights in that way? I think for him to take the position that even though the people who do have rights in that way have said we can put the deck there, I think he's wrong to say we can't get a building permit. And I come back to the question, and it really would be helpful to all of us, at least on this side of the table. What does the town council say about this? Does Mr. Street's advice reflect the town council, or does it not? I think we need to know that. Now, none of this changes the obligation of the planning board to make decisions on the special permit and on site plan review. And we would need to know, or certainly want to know, whether we've gotten a special permit, whether site plan review has been granted, to make it worth going to court if indeed we needed to do that. So we need to know the decisions about this. At best, I think what the planning board might do with this is simply make a finding. The finding is a statement of fact. The finding is that on January 24, 2023, the building commissioner issued this memo. And there it is in your decision. That's what it says. It says we can't get a building permit, according to him, despite the issuance of the special permit and site plan review. And we'll have to deal with that if we go for a building permit and he won't issue it. We'll have to deal with that. But that's all I think you should do with his memo. Thank you.
I think what we really need to do is stay within the purview of what our board has some jurisdiction over and is allowed to do. And we can do that. Very definitely, we can do that. So what we're being asked to do is to either approve or disapprove a special permit for an under 4% increase on that piece of land owned by Mr. Bogosian. And what I have asked is, because we have just heard from the building commissioner very late this afternoon, we don't know what else is hanging out there, that we continue this for another 2 weeks till our next meeting. And what date would that be, Melinda?
February 14th.
February,
It's 3 weeks.
could be just the right date for this kind of thing.
I have made it known a month ago when you said the 14th that I will not be here. I said that when they scheduled it,
that.
I objected to it, and I said I wouldn't be here.
And what is after that, the 28th? Because
keep
there's
in
a lot
mind-
of, as you say in your own memorandum to us recently, there are a lot of other steps to take. You need to go to the select board, there are things that you need to do. So we are not the only delay here. So we will continue this till the 28th. I think it's only fair to wait for a full board if it's possible for us to do that, but I really would now like a motion to continue this to February 28th.
Charlotte, did you want to continue it, or do you want to close
We
the
want to
special
close the
permit
hearing.
application?
Wait, first we ought to close the hearing,
Close the,
and then we're going to continue it. Okay, so first a motion to close the hearing.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting's closed. A motion to continue until the 28th.
So move.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's where we are. So I'm at least as disappointed as you are, and we'll see. Paul?
May I make a comment, please?
Yeah.
I've listened carefully to a lot of testimony in the last several weeks, and there was one comment made by the attorney for the people objecting, that we're going to give Longfellow whatever they want. I think that's not fair to this board. We've spent an awful lot of time, at least 4 meetings, staff time, an enormous amount of time, and I don't think we're rolling over, giving him whatever he wants. We're carefully deliberating all of these issues. So I think that should be recognized. And the last speaker also said that the particular developer has unfinished projects all over town. That's totally irrelevant to what this project is. So I think we should be careful about some of the things when we're disparaging a developer in town. Thank you.
We ready to move on?
You bet.
Okay,
Madam Chair?
yep. We still, we're
No, it was exactly
here
my
somewhere.
Oh, okay.
The site plan review,
Yeah, we have to go on.
just for clarity's sake.
Yeah,
Still
I
comes
just
another
need
vote.
to find my piece of paper here. Okay, our next applicant is Blue Moon Sea Grill. Continued, site plan review application to develop a Class 1 restaurant with outdoor deck located at 159 Main Street. We did close this hearing.
No, the hearing was closed.
No, we're ready for a decision on this, but we're going to, we already heard what was said about it. I think we've heard it before. Pat?
No, there's another reason, though, that we need to continue this. We got this information, and people in the public who want to review it under site plan review haven't had the chance to see it. So they need to be able to come in and see the information that was given to us today under site plan review.
Was the meeting closed?
No, we didn't ever close it.
You closed the hearing for the special permit, but site plan review is technically just a public meeting.
So we don't really close
So
it.
we
Deb
don't
never
close it.
closes is the point. Okay, that's, I wasn't sure.
Oh, all right, then because we don't, what we can do here, the two hang together. And rather than trying to do something separately on this, we've heard, again, the heartfelt objections to this and the heartfelt acclaim for it and how it should be approved. So we don't need to hear it all over again, but we do need to continue it till the 28th also and make a decision on the two because they are so closely linked. So if we could, have the staff prepare a decision for us to be ready then if we need it. But now you'll have time to take into account on that anything we learn in the meanwhile. Right,
Madam
and we
Chairman?
can cover it then.
I would only ask that going forward, we adhere to nothing new.
Nothing new.
Because I believe I've heard everything 4 or 5 times, including everything tonight. It should have been nothing new that we spent a lot of time on. I heard one thing new, which is important, but I think we should stick with the rule. If it's new, we'll listen. Because just to rehash everything over and over and over again, especially hearing disparaging remarks, and I heard things that I wanted to bring up that are not true, and I just decided to let them go. It just makes the argument go on and on and on. And if they're bringing something new, I'm all set. If they want to bring the same thing up over again, over and over and over
Yeah, but
again, I
what's
object
really
to it.
happened here, as far as what we're tripping over, is we're not hearing from the town council, or the building commissioner until right before the meeting. What's with that? It puts us in a very awkward position. And people feel very strongly about it. I know they do. They're
Okay, if it's new, it's fine. If it isn't, it's up to you. You make the decision.
Okay, so
Well,
we
thank
want a
you.
motion to continue the site plan review of the Blue Moon Sea Grill?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I move that we continue the site plan review application of Blue Moon Sea Grill, Inc. until February 28th. Is that the date? we
That's the
decided?
date, right?
Oh, we're continuing this till the 28th, not the 14th, we're not.
Yeah,
Right.
Okay.
the 28th.
The other
Okay.
one is the 28th. as
28th.
They're
well.
both the
as well.
28th.
Okay.
They're together. We got a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So once again,
Thank you.
see you. Moving on. The applicant for our next project is Michael Galasso, a site plan review application for a 71-unit workforce housing building with 973 square foot restaurant at 545 Main Street. And Paul, if you could read the public notice. It's a great project.
Thank you, Mike.
Mike, is
Great.
all this in here? all this in here?
Yes.
Okay. I don't need to cancel the papers then.
Wow, nice booklet.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, Paul, public notice?
Yeah. Madam Chair, excuse me, a notice of this public meeting was published on 1/13/23, and 62 abutters were notified by regular mail.
And I guess you're all here about this project. Okay, Michael, you're on.
Great, thank you, Madam Chairman. My name's Michael Glassel, 107 Lakeview Ave. I'm the applicant for this project, and first I'd like to thank staff for their help in getting this to you quickly. They've been very helpful as an affordable housing project. This evening, along with myself, is John Keenan, he's our project architect, and Mike Porcelli, who's our civil engineer. Tom Lee is our landscape architect, sorry. He's not able to be with us tonight. So advancement is... So, many of you have lived here a long time. You might be familiar with this building. It's the Oakcrest Hotel that was up in Falmouth Heights. In Falmouth Heights, for a number of years, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, is where many of our workforce lived, especially during the summer. You know, unfortunately, over the years, we've torn down many of these buildings. And what we're trying to do with 545 Main Street is actually replace that type of housing that we think is desperately needed in our community. So the intent of 545 Main Street, which was formerly called the Falmouth Nursing Home, this is the original rendering of the building. It was designed by two architects who lived here in Falmouth, had their office in Falmouth. Actually, their office is at 44 Scranton Avenue. You may recognize that building has a very modern-looking office building, too, right at the corner of Scranton Ave and Robbins Road. It happens to be where my office is now, too. So even before I got involved in this project and knew anything about these architects, that's where I reside. So it's a mid-century modern building, originally built in 1968. It was added onto in 1972. It's zoned business redevelopment in general residential in a small corner of it, which is, and it's also part of the mixed residential commercial overlay district. The building has been vacant for a number of years, but it has not been abandoned. All the services have been on. It's been used for training. And one of the reasons why it became available, they moved all the residents over to Jones Road, but they just couldn't staff it any longer. So one of the reasons why we were able to acquire this property is because the owner understood what we were going to do with it, which was to make it into workforce housing. He knew, based upon his own personal experience, how desperately it was needed. So it's approximately 50,000 square feet. It's fully sprinkled, alarmed. It was used as a 120-bed nursing facility, and it has currently 73 parking spaces. It is on town sewer, and we have an email from Amy Lowell, who's our wastewater superintendent, that it will use 10,340 less gallons per day than what they use for the nursing home. When she told me that, being an affordable housing developer, I asked her, well, can we take those 10,000 gallons and give it to an affordable housing project? And she said, well, it doesn't quite work that way. But one of the issues that has been brought up by staff is the drainage in the back parking lot. It's old. It was installed when the building was originally developed, but it works. I've been out there during rainstorms. Our engineer has been out there too, and you'll hear a little bit more about the drainage of the site from Mike Porcelli in a little while. We have a letter of support, which I hope that you've received from the Affordable Housing Committee. We've presented the project to them. The chairperson is here this evening. And we plan on providing at least 25% of the units as affordable. So being affordable means we have 3 different types of rooms. We have single rooms, and I'll show you those rooms in a minute. Those will rent for $1,141 a month, including utilities. So all the utilities will be paid by the landlord in this building. The studio will be $1,522, and 1 bedrooms will be $1,631. Those are the rents today in 2022. And again, all utilities are included.
one of the difference from your ordinance, your overlay ordinance, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide housing for our seasonal workers. And your ordinance requires that all the rooms and all the units have one-year leases. We're asking that the one-year leases be applied to the affordable units, the 25% units, but the other units be available on a month-to-month basis. That will help us serve that seasonal employment base that we're trying to reach. So, in front of the building right now, if you drive by, there's a white picket fence, which is very nice, and it was to sort of keep the residents who live there, on the property. But we really see the front of the property, the front's right on Main Street, being more of a public plaza, something that the whole community can use. So Tom has designed this, and this is concept planning, that picks up the architectural style of the building, but it's really a place where we want people to come and enjoy, and that are walking down Main Street. Have two entrances, one from each side of the property, crossing into a little plaza right in front of the building. This is the current condition of the site with the 73 current parking spaces that are on the site. We'll talk more about parking in a little bit, too. So let me walk you quickly through the building, and if you have more questions, more technical questions, that's why John's here. So you walk in the front door. This is a type of building that I've built throughout my career. We have a number of them in California. You can go onto our website and see them, Barone Glasso and Associates, Inc. So one of the important things is that we always want to keep an eye on the front door. This building will be staffed 24 hours a day. We'll have a manager, assistant manager, people who work at the front desk. It does operate somewhat like a hotel, but there won't be any daily rentals or anything like that. There'll be monthly or yearly, yes. So you come into the front door, and in order to get into the main part of the building, you have to walk by our front desk, and there's a set of double doors there that are, the only way to get in is with your fingerprint. That's how these doors work. And the only way to get into this building is through the front door. There's been discussion about letting people in the side door because it's closer to the parking. We're not really in favor of that. Of course, that door would be operable with a panic bar to get out of, but we want everyone to come into the front door for various reasons. We want to see who's coming and going. The round part of the building, we're pretty much keeping intact. Those rooms are pretty good size. We plan on, and you can see some of the pictures of the type of furniture that we're planning on using. We'll get into the details of the rooms in a moment. But we're planning on keeping those rooms as they're currently configured with half baths in between them, and then a common area bathroom in the center of the building, in the center of the donut. Those will be individual common bathrooms, so you'll be able to, you walk into them, you shut the door, take a shower, do whatever you want to do, change your clothes for the day, get ready to go to work, and then you leave out them. So they're not what I call the type of showers that we sometimes use in the YMCA or the sports center. They're all little individual bathrooms. As you walk down the hall to the new addition, which was added in 1972, there are one-bedroom units and studio units. And a little bit further back is a common area kitchen for our residents to use. It's a fully equipped kitchen just for our residents to use, because in their rooms, they basically have a microwave and a little under-counter refrigerator. But if you want to do more food preparation than that, you're able to go into the communal kitchen and use that. So the double doors at the back of the building is a co-working space that can be used by our residents. It's only for use by our residents. One other place that they have too, as you go out the side door to a little area that they used to have a daycare center there, will be a little outdoor place with tables and chairs, umbrellas, and a grass-fired grill. We plan on taking out all the mechanical systems in the building and replacing them with new energy-efficient electric equipment. We'll also be putting solar panels on the roof. It's very similar to what we just did at our project in North Falmouth, McAnta Crossing, which is
affordable housing that's all 100% electrical. There's no fossil fuels used there at all, and they even have electric car charging stations in the garage. So this gives you an idea of the type of furniture we're putting in the room. So all the rooms, all the units are fully furnished. You don't have to bring anything to move in here. We don't even take a security deposit. You just pay your rent, and you're able to move in. No first, last, second. You don't have to call a utility company and pay a deposit there. It's really made for convenience. But this gives you an idea. We're working with a company called Resource Furniture out of New York. They specialize in providing furniture for these type of establishments. And this gives you an idea what they're going to look like in our rooms. So the single rooms will have you can call it a Murphy bed, modern version of a Murphy bed, a desk, a chair, and a little kitchenette with a sink, an under-counter refrigerator, and a microwave. That's typical of every one of the rooms there. The half bath in between is only used by one of the rooms. Right now, if you went there, you'd see that both rooms could use a half bath, but we couldn't figure out a way to best manage that, so one gets it and the other doesn't right now. We've walked through a number of people through this building, and some of the comments we got from some of the people who work at Hui is that they don't earn a lot of money. And they need something that's really less expensive, even less expensive than what we're proposing. And we have many people who work in our community, who provide services in our community, that have been here for a long time, that work in the restaurants that we all go to, that have lived for a number of years in the older motels in East Falmouth and other places, sometimes 4, 5, or 6 to a room. And to them, they want a nice, clean place, safe place that they can come home to every night. And if it meant that it was a bunk room, then that's what they'd be happy with. So we have just 2 of these downstairs on the very bottom floor that could accommodate up to 4 people to a room. And we've talked to the building commissioner and the health department here, and they believe that this can work because we have enough square footage in those rooms. So you think of 8 people to a little room, but they feel that this could work. Still requires a little more study by us, but we think it's an amenity that would be good to have, at least to try. And if it doesn't work, then we can turn these back into regular rooms too. This is our 1-bedroom unit. On the first floor, we have 6 of these. Has its own kitchenette, fully furnished kitchen, fully furnished room, bedroom, and a bath, full bath. And these are our studio units. Again, they're all furnished using the furniture from Resource Furniture. Solar panels on the roof. We're not going to do a lot on the exterior of the building. You know, it's over 50 years old. It does have, I think, strong historical characteristics that are worth preserving. We are talking to some historical folks to see whether or not it would qualify for historic tax credits. I mentioned we have the common area kitchen in the back. Some folks had asked, okay, where do people put their food? So they have these food lockers now that can keep your food cold if you like, or it can just keep it at room temperature. So that's something, so if you go out and you go shopping, you're not quite sure where to put your food. We don't like people having a lot of food in their rooms. This is something they can use for that. And also there'll be some vending machines, but not the vending machines that we grew up with. They just have candy and gum and soda, but with fresh produce. Okay. One of the issues that we have is parking. As we've looked at the parking and redesigned it to today's standards, even though today cars have gotten smaller than they were in 1968, the parking spots have gotten bigger. So we believe, based upon your ordinance, that we need 71 parking spaces, 1 per unit, and then we need 3.24 parking spaces for the restaurant, which is 973 square feet, and your ordinance says we need a spot for every 300 square feet. So we feel that we need a total of 74 parking spaces. There have been many studies done over the years about the benefit of using shared vehicles. And so we're looking into a program that the folks have been talking to me about for a couple of years. They're out of California, but it's called, I'll get to that one in a second. Let's talk about the parking. As I said, every time we talk to someone, we keep on losing parking spaces. So the fire department, Jed was nice enough to talk to the fire department, the building commissioner, and they felt that they couldn't get a hook and ladder truck down the center aisle to make the parking work that we have. The parking, before you see the X's drawn out, is 61 parking spaces. We would lose 5 parking spaces, or I felt that it was important to put some trees and solar lights out in that parking lot. That's the center aisle. If we lose the center aisle, then we don't lose any parking spaces. So it's a trade-off between, some trees for shading, trees for catching carbon, all the good things that trees do, adding solar lights back there, or taking out 5 parking spaces. I'd like to keep the center aisle and the trees and the solar light, and doesn't mean that we'd go down our parking spots would be reduced by 5. So, as I mentioned a moment ago, we look into alternative than everyone having their own car. This is a company called Envoy, and they provide electric vehicles for use exclusively by our residents. And like everything these days, it works on an app. So you get an app, and if you want to use the car, you reserve it there. And then you pay by the minute. So it depends upon what car you want to use, how much you pay per minute. So if you were to take one of the VE e-Golf electric cars and go up to Logan Airport to pick up a friend and come back, let's say that takes you 4 hours. By using this car, it will cost you less than taking the bus. The bus is about $35 each way, $70 round trip. This will cost you less by taking one of these cars to go up there. And plus you'll be able to pick up your buddies and bring them back too. So we want you to consider in our request to reduce the number of parking spaces, which you have in your ordinance, and I think I might have even suggested that be put in that ordinance when we were having meetings about it, that you can reduce the on-site parking by having shared car use. So this is something we think is very worthwhile. We'll have these electric bicycles. Now, people are often concerned about how fast they can go. There's a governor on them that can only go 15 miles per hour. That's the max they can go. Those will be available for our residents, too. And then this is another, everything's by an app these days. So we don't want people to come and think there's a parking spot in the back for them. They'll be able to go onto this app and see whether there is or there isn't. So they don't have to drive around the block and look for parking spots. We think that we'll have enough there. We believe that probably up to 20% of our residents who live there will not have a vehicle. We don't want them to have vehicles. We have public transportation. We're going to build a bus shelter on Main Street, very similar to the one we just built in North Falmouth at our project there. And we think that between the bus stop, the ride sharing, the bikes, both regular and electric, that we'll be able to reduce the parking on site. So this is the end of the presentation that I have on the screen. But in your booklet, if you look in your booklet, there are copies of some of the policies that we've all worked on over the years regarding affordable housing. There's a local comprehensive plan that we have for 50 years. In that housing element, it says that we're supposed to create policies for adaptive reuse of existing structures, that's this building, to new innovative types of housing. So I think that this project really fits into that goal in our housing element of the local comprehensive plan. So our housing production plan, which we're all familiar with, approved by town meeting, so was the local comprehensive plan, that rental housing is a top need for our seasonal workers. Dormitory-style housing is and shared housing should be explored. In section 8.32 of the housing production plan, it encourages the creation of public-private partnerships with developers. redevelop of underutilized, non-residential properties into housing. I think this project fits that requirement. Group homes or other shared living options for older special needs or Falmouth workforce should be considered. In the section called Summary of Priority Housing Needs, we need more affordable rentals. We need diverse and affordable housing options. So, in summary, we believe that 545 meets the objectives of the new overlay. It provides an incentive to create workforce, senior, and affordable units. It promotes greater density of housing opportunities along our commercial corridor, provides housing for people at all stages of their life, all levels of affordability, and sets forth in the town's local comprehensive plan. It incorporates car sharing, which is mentioned. We have bike sharing program, public transportation, a bus stop. Going to be energy efficient. We believe that it implements policies for housing that's been adopted by the town meeting in its approval of the comprehensive plan and the housing production plan. So that's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, I know there's some other folks here that would like to speak. Michael is here to talk about drainage and parking and anything else, questions that you have.
I think that this is a tremendously exciting project. The use of that building, it couldn't really be better, as you pointed out in what you presented, better for the town in any way. It's wonderful, and it's an exciting plan. The people who've planned the use of the building have done a wonderful job with it, in my opinion. I think it's really, really exciting. And what I'd like to do for you, Michael, is get a sense of the reactions of the board and then ask for other public comment and then come back to any questions.
Sure.
So, reactions?
Sure. I don't know if it's, we're the planning board, so this probably isn't what we would talk about, but why are you doing 25% of units affordable?
Well, economics really drives that. I mean, the more affordable units that we do, and as you know, we've done more affordable in some of our other projects, it just increases the amount of subsidy that we need for the project. That's really what drives it. Now, what Bobby said earlier today, and I'm a member of the Falmouth Housing Authority, but I'm not speaking on their behalf, but listening to her presentation, things like having project-based Section 8 certificates helps the economics and might allow us to do more if the project would qualify and this type of housing would qualify, which I don't know, haven't explored that yet. But really, that's what drives it. This is going to be probably around a $15 million project. When you look at how much that is per unit, it's about $350,000, $370,000 per unit, but the units are small. I mean, my project, Megantic Crossing, ended up costing $500,000 a unit. Those are 2- and 3-bedroom units, a little bit different, but it's driven by economics.
Okay. And
Did you want to comment?
If 25% are going to be affordable, which you're presenting that way, what are you going to have for deed restrictions, oversight, et cetera? Have you thought that through yet?
Yeah, I mean, we would, so I'm glad you brought this up. Two things. One, yes, we would have a deed restriction that would limit it, because I know that everyone could be concerned about what's going to prevent you from renting these out on a nightly basis or a monthly basis. So we want to have a very strong deed restriction.
For dedicated units?
Yes, yeah, and so it'll be spread out across the union types, too, the union types. So all 25 wouldn't be just the single rooms. Certain would be some of the single rooms, some of the 1-bedrooms, some of the studios. It wouldn't be on the bunk rooms.
Okay.
Yeah. And one other thing, because this is part of your ordinance too, is we talked to DHCD, they're not quite sure how to handle this as far as having all the units be added to our subsidized list. They haven't given us a ruling. I'm working with Kim on this to see whether or not we can get them all on the list. That would be our goal, but because it's a different type of building, different type of uses, and not everyone has their own single bathroom, they're having a little bit of a time trying to figure out how they would do it, how they would handle it.
I think we'll have time for questions. We'll get back to them. Now we're just
I'm good,
looking for
thank you.
initial reactions. Bob?
I have questions.
Oh, you don't want to say what your reaction is?
Well, I've found that if I react too soon to something, I may end up eating those words. So,
Oh, okay.
See,
but I do have some questions.
mind your way.
You're waiting for us to.
Well, the only question I had, and I think he almost answered it, would this count towards our housing production plan?
Partially.
Because that's what I would want because that would make a huge difference. I'm in favor of it anyways, but the numbers alone, with other things going on, would help us satisfy our goals for a long time. And I just think we should get that question answered soon.
I'd just like to point out too that this application is not before us for the use. That's going to be
But
before
he
the zoning board of
mentioned housing
appeals.
production plan, and I was just
No, I understand. but I just don't want you guys to
questioning.
get.
I hope it does.
They still have to go before the zoning board of appeals for the use.
Okay.
But I just wanted to make that clear. I understand what you're saying.
I only brought it up because he mentioned it, and I thought I'd like to have that clarified.
Pat?
My reaction is go for it, but I also have questions.
Sure.
Like time frame.
Entirely. Paul?
Mr. Glass, I have this is a site plan review, but I have a couple of fundamental questions. Obviously, with the nature of this, it needs to have a real full-time manager organizer. You made reference to that earlier. How's that going to work with such a variety of different clients?
Well, fortunately, I've got some experience, having done it for almost 40 years now on very similar type buildings. And, I have managers in my properties that have been with me for close to 20 years who do an excellent job in tenant selection, managing the properties, and keeping them full. And so it just goes down to the personnel. But we got to set it up right for them, too. That manager, he or she, is the most important person on that property.
True.
We don't give him the bunk room. He gets the best apartment in the building because we want him to stay a long time. They take a lot of pride in the properties that they manage. So you're right, property management is key to these type of properties. It's key to any affordable housing property. And we have to submit a property management plan, not only to the town, but to all our lenders, and more than willing to share that with you and get your comments on it. And I think you'll see, how we manage our properties when Megantic Crossing opens up. There, we actually have a independent property management company that's doing that for us. She's doing a fabulous job. And I'm glad we did that, because going through that initial process of bringing on new tenants is very cumbersome.
You're not a candidate for property manager, are you?
No, but maybe you are.
Another quick question. There's quite a variety of different...
Wait, not fair. We're going to come back for
Comments
questions. We're
now,
just
no
getting
questions.
comments now, because then we're going to get public comments. Pam?
I think this is phenomenal. I think it's innovative. It's you. I mean, it really is all the things you've brought to that Affordable Housing Committee through the years has been geared toward how do we accommodate the largest number of people who come here seasonally or who are working full-time throughout the year. But this sort of satisfies almost everything you've ever talked about.
Thank you.
For obvious reasons, because you've done it before. I think you're going to have some very interesting I can't even think of the word that I'm thinking of.
Careful.
Sociological dynamics that you're going to have the proper people there at all times. I mean, this is obviously co-ed.
Yes.
I didn't hear you say you're restricting, could a man and a woman share a room? 2 women?
Probably not the rooms, because we like to keep those to single occupancy. That's what SRO stands for, single room occupancy. We like to keep those to one person.
This is blending into questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, so that's sort of where I'm
Yeah,
going.
and I
And
can
that's
explain that more,
what
sure.
I'm going to be very, very interested in, how you do your selection and how you monitor people's behavior. Which you're going to have to do, whether you want to or not.
Would you like me to answer that, or you want to?
No.
Okay.
No, you don't
you.
have to answer it. Just it's a comment.
what I'd like to do is, Michael, you can stand there to answer questions perhaps, or take your seat and hear from the public reactions to this project.
Hi, my name is David Jarvis. I agree with everybody saying this is an exciting project. I'm in the restaurant business, and it has become increasingly harder and harder to get people, especially in the back room, the kitchen. I'm not sure if you're aware of what we go through to get foreign help to come in to work for us seasonally, but it's a process where you go, tell them what you need, apply for it, and then your name goes into a lottery, and you pray on January 2nd that you'll be in Group A. Because if you're in Group C, there's a very good chance, most likely, you're not going to get anyone. So now you have the prospects of looking at what's going to happen to me this summer because I can't get any local kids to work. At our particular restaurant, we had 3 kids that were dishwashers. One worked 2 days, one worked a week, another one worked 2 weeks. They all quit. Mommy and Daddy don't support us and say, wait a minute now. You made gave this man your word. Stick it out for the summer. So I have now had more and more foreign help come in. So to have the ability to get a place to rent is not just for the restaurant people. I see it for, my wife is a visiting nurse, and they have travel nurses, fire department, police department, teachers, landscapers. I mean, it covers all kinds of people of employment. So I guess and the other thing too is everybody that's in business is also competing to have a house. So we're competing against younger people that might be looking to buy their first house. And when they're competing against not someone from out of town, but someone that's been here all their lives, but they need a house for someone to stay in, it may lessen that load where that person, has a chance to purchase a house, at the entry level. So I think this is just a great idea.
Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Roland Lamoran. I was in the restaurant business for quite a number of years. This project should go without any restrictions. This town needs this more than most of you may know. This town is based on 3 forms of the economy, the service industry being the number 1. We have the scientific community, we have the medical facility. But the restaurant community in this town is against the wall right now. Their business model calls for a lot of times to be open 7 days a week. In a lot of cases, they can only be open 5 days a week. That's going to spell disaster. We're coming out of COVID. We're coming off of a situation last summer where we didn't have enough staff. Restaurants, whether it was an ice cream parlor or a full-service restaurant, had to have abbreviated hours. That doesn't fill their business model. So I believe what Michael is doing here is a great asset for the town. It should be done multiple times because there is multiple use needed in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Come ahead.
My name is Arthur Vost. My mother is in a butter of this property on the back side of it, and she's worried about headlights shining in her bedroom and noise, and her fence is just a chain link fence. It's quite old. We're just wondering if they could improve that somewhat. And also, she's worried about derelict vehicles. Like we were at another place where a contractor just filled up his truck with trash and left it there for months. So is there something that could be done for something like that?
Yes.
Thank you. First, I'd love to meet with your mom and talk a little bit more about what we're doing and everything, so I haven't had an opportunity to do that yet. But yeah, we plan on replacing that fence in the back with a stockade type fence if that's what works for it. And as far as having, you know, derelict cars or any type of vehicles back there that shouldn't be back there, we don't allow anyone to repair their cars on site. If they don't work, they can't be there. In case you don't know, my family's been in town since 1961. So we're very committed to our community, and mostly everyone has my phone, and if anything happens that disrupts her or in any way, I want to know about it right away, and we'll take care of it. So if it's okay, I'd like to visit with you and your mom sometime, the next few weeks or whatever, talk a little bit more about what we're doing and make sure we take care of what her needs are.
Anyone else? No, okay, now, Bob, your questions.
You've got some more. You just weren't fast.
Thank you.
Better be quick.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Bloomberg. I am a grad student at Hui. And, you know, we have a large issue amongst the Hui community for this housing, but I think that an important thing when we're considering these things is the fact that all adults, temporary, out of town, or full-time residents really deserve the dignity of a private bathroom. And I think that not having a kitchen really doesn't count as a permanent housing solution. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents just for that.
You know, of course, we hear those concerns and everything, and so that's why we put so much effort into that community kitchen that we have. I have probably about 300 units that just have kitchenettes in their units with a microwave oven and under-counter refrigerator, and we've had people who lived in those. It's not for everyone, for 20 or 30 years. So we're trying to accommodate both those things the best we can without tearing the building completely apart and increasing costs. And I've have real-life experience about how these sort of common bathrooms could work. The pictures that you see that are on the slide here come from a YWCA in Boston, in the south end of Boston, that was converted into a hotel called the Revolution Hotel. I've stayed there. The rooms are smaller than the rooms that we have, and the shared bathrooms are immaculate. They're very well taken care of. They're managed very well. And so I believe that with the right management and how we approach it, that they can work well for, you know, people who, and we're looking to serve folks who work all day long, maybe 1 or 2 jobs. They want to come home to a nice place, get a good night's rest, and get up the next morning and go to work. I think I've been quoted in the paper that I want it to be a fun place to live. What I mean by that is that I want people to enjoy coming home, that they're not coming home to some place that's not clean, doesn't smell good, it's not energy efficient, doesn't have great people and staff there. I mean, that's the type of environment that we want to create there. It was actually fun to live in the Heights during those years. I actually lived there. I lived next to the casino for one summer. And I think that's part of something that's been missing in our community for a little while. And hopefully we can bring that enthusiasm back.
Good evening, Eleanor Ling, Precinct 1. I'm really excited about this project, and I don't want to repeat all the positive comments that people have said already. And I just want to point out something that I and other people are very excited about this project is because it is so well planned in terms of, you know, energy efficiency and energy independence and resilience. And this project could serve as a model for future projects, future housing projects. And that, you know, it is doable and we should do it. The town really need to move very, you know, aggressively in that direction because we are a very vulnerable town and facing, you know, climate change and climate crisis. And I want to applaud Mike and his colleagues for this well-thought-out and well-planned project. And also, I want to add that, I think this project will bring a lot of vitality to Falmouth downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
Madam Chair, thank you. Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering. I represent the applicant, so I'm not here to comment. I'm here to just report to you some information about the drainage that I explored and investigated on the site, just to kind of close the loop on the site plan aspects. So usually I'm up here proposing new drainage, maybe for a new subdivision road, might be a new parking lot, and we do drainage calculations. We design it to today's standards. On this site, as of right now, we haven't done that. We have an existing paved parking lot. We have existing drainage. The drainage patterns are established. The parking lot is in relatively good shape. Could it be fixed up with some sealing of some of the cracks? Yes, of course. It's proposed to be restriped to make the parking meet today's standards as far as dimensionally. But the drainage, as of right now, all I can offer you is anecdotal evidence. As an engineer, lead kind of a boring life because we do a lot of drainage and things like that, and in our spare time we look at our drainage systems to see if they work. The last thing we want to do is propose something and drive into a subdivision we designed and find out that there's a drainage problem. So this property has been somewhat of an interest to me over the last 6 or 8 months. Most rainstorms, I go there. I may go there at lunch. I may go there in the morning if we have a torrential downpour, and I look at the drainage system. And I have never been there and not seen it except and accommodate the storm water from the storm events that I've witnessed. I've been there in torrential downpours. I can't say statistically if it's a design storm, so to speak, but I've been there at the beginnings of storms. I've been there in the middle. I've gone an hour after the rainfall is over. I've looked in the catch basins. I've never seen any ponding or any substantial potential for surcharge. So it's been interesting to me to witness that. I've never seen any issues with storm water runoff interfering with any of the abutting properties. All of the drainage, except for the entrance, the very beginning of the entrance in, all of the drainage in the site has been designed so that it drains into the site versus off-site. So if there were some ultra extraordinary rainfall event, I think what we'd see is possibly some ponding in the low points on the site itself. We inspected the drainage, we popped the covers, looked in with flashlights, ran cameras down pipes, and everything appears to be solid and stable. Yes, it was built in the 80s. We do things differently now, but I've seen no evidence of failure of the drainage system. I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman?
Any other member of the public? Jim?
Well, I need to first ask the town planner to bring forward what our special permit requirements regarding site plan review and engineered drawings. I have seen this board listening to anecdotal things and accept a plan without following it. But I believe if you look deep into the language, it specifically says that the site plan has to be land, court, quality, engineering, taking care of easement, drainage. There's a special clause in our, and I'd like you to read it to the board. So not only for this meeting, past meetings and future meetings, they understand that sometimes we try to help people out and do what's right, but we're totally violating what we're supposed to do. I think Mike's an excellent engineer. I'd love to see this project going forward. But I'm really afraid that I've seen this board waive it for other things on Main Street, and waiving it again, if that's the case, we should delete that clause from our bylaw and say we don't have to do it anymore. Because you already ignored it once. I recused myself from that meeting, couldn't brought it up. But I know it's there, and I'd like you to read it to the board and what the qualifications are for a site plan review for engineering. And it's specific, and I don't think any of the board members but me are familiar with it.
I don't know the clause that you're referring to offhand,
There.
but we'll find it, and I
I
can.
wish I could quote you chapter and verse, but I know it's there. I've read it.
Sure, we can have that discussion.
We could, and could you
Obviously, a
send it
later
to
date.
us in writing, and we'll see how long it is before we have to.
It's short.
Okay.
It has to meet the qualifications of the land court. And it's a paragraph about everything it's supposed to be. It's only for site plan review, and we stopped doing it a few years ago.
Bob, you said you had questions.
Yeah. First of all, I was glad to see people who own restaurants and businesses come forward and be public about, let the public know, because I don't think the public really understands the dilemma that you're in. I work with a landscaper who has gone to the extreme of putting an addition onto his house to house his workers. I mean, that's how crazy it's getting. But I had two questions. When we talk about workforce housing, we're talking about seasonal workers, how is that determined who gets those units? Could have, say, one restaurateur say, Mike, I got 10 workers coming, I want to reserve those? Because I could see a business actually renting those spaces for their workers and maybe deducting something from the worker. So how does that work?
Yeah, we have had people, and actually one of our partners in this project, that one of the reasons why they're interested is they want to know that they have rooms and accommodations available for those people they're bringing over. I believe, and maybe Dave could answer it better than I do, the folks who come over on those various programs, they need to show on their application they've got a place where they're going to live and stuff. Right. And so what we've thought about, and we haven't worked it all the way through, is that it's okay if they want to block off a certain number of rooms, but we do all the verification. You know, we make sure if they're going into if they qualify for affordable room, they have to meet all those qualifications, and they've got to meet the other qualifications that we have too. We're not intending on leasing to them a block of rooms, you know, in bulk. We're intending on them having the right to occupy those rooms with their residents up to a certain point. And we don't want to leave any of those rooms vacant. So there may be a time limit on when they have to fill it up, but they got to tell us before the season who's coming and when they're coming. But yeah, I mean, and of course, that's one of the big needs.
Yeah. And the other question I have is, what happens when those rooms are empty for the off-season? Can they be leased out as well or rented out?
Yep. So we've talked to a lot of people because this is such a different project and everything, trying to figure out the market. And one of the folks that we talked to is our current chief of police. We wanted to know if he would have any use for it, and he said, absolutely. When he recruits policemen to come here, they may not have made a decision yet whether they're going to move here. They may not bring their family here. Having something that would be available to them, whether what time of the year that it is, that he knows that he could find them a place on Main Street, close to the station, everything, would be a big plus. So even though we talk a lot about seasonal employees and living here, we really need to keep the thing full year-round. Mm-hmm. And so one of the reasons for the bunk room is that there may be people who are going to live there year-round, and maybe they'd like to lower the rent and move down to the bunk room during the summer with 3 other people and free up their room.
Yeah.
So we've talked, and again, we're going to have to develop a management plan, how we handle situations like that too. But those are our thoughts about how we would do it.
Okay, thanks.
Because it is a little different. They're not all going to be year-round residents and stuff. So we've got a real mix here. We've got a mix of people. But I think we're going to create the environment that is going to be conducive to what they're looking for.
Yeah, good, thanks.
Yeah. Part of my market research is that I happen to know a number of the foreign waitresses that work at Estia's right down the street, and they've provided me with a lot of information on what they think would work, because they would be our clients.
Mm-hmm.
Pat, you had questions?
I'm wondering what time frame, because you're going to have special permits, all kinds of things, I assume.
Yeah.
So what time frame are you looking at before the first occupant can move in?
Well, I think if you asked Alberto or Dave, they like to have it this summer.
Oh, obviously, yes.
But, I think we're planning on that. It's going to take us probably the rest of this year just to get through the permit and actually develop the working drawings too, and select a contractor, and put together the financing and stuff. We do have a deadline on when we have to close on the property, so we're actually going to have to close on the property before hopefully we have our permits. That's a condition of our closing on the property. But it's probably going to sit there under our ownership for a number of months while we go through the rest of the process. But I would think that we're this year planning, permitting, start construction, hopefully by this time next year, and it's going to take a good 12 months to build it out. Yeah, we're taking out all the mechanical systems, we're doing a lot of work there, so, yeah, I wish it was quicker. I think the one thing is that, we do have a good structure there. It's got good bones, it's been well taken care of because it was a nursing home, they have a lot of inspections. So it's well worth preserving and saving and working with what we have there. But we do feel we need to replace the mechanical systems, probably the plumbing, and probably electrical too.
Okay, another question I have is the courtyard out front that you hope people will enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
I had somehow gotten a different impression, and it's probably an erroneous impression, I'm sure, that I thought you were having a commercial kitchen, that you might have somebody doing cooking that people could go in and enjoy.
Well, we are planning a restaurant of 973 square feet. It's a Class 1 restaurant because if we just had, we want to do something that's sort of like pie in the sky. Coffee, pastries, things like that, a little soft cooking and stuff like that, but that's considered fast food. So we had to switch to a Class 1 restaurant.
Okay.
So we do have down in the basement, because they used to make 3 meals a day there, a full commercial kitchen. That could be used as part of the restaurant. As you know, in New York City and many cities, they do the cooking down in the basement, they bring it up through a dumbwaiter, it gets served that way and stuff. But the intent is not really to do like a full-service sit-down restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a cafe, but we don't have a classification that can fit in without it being classified as fast food.
So are you
Even though
looking
Coffee O would be considered fast food, so would
Right.
Pie in the Sky, so.
Are you looking at perhaps in the future you could do some maneuvering around and try to get something like that or not? This is my curiosity.
With Bob Arment, he could probably figure it out for us and get done. But yeah, that's what we'd like to have, that's what we think. So many of the properties that I have in San Diego, my brother runs our cafe, Cafe Italia there. Dave might be familiar with it, being out there in San Diego. And it really becomes a neighborhood gathering place. And a lot of deals get cut there on the courtyard. A lot of politicians hang out there. But, we just really want that court. There's no place on Main Street. You walk down past Gifford Street, and there's a lot of parking lots that we have there. And as you notice, more and more people are walking down that end of Main Street now. So we really want a place where people can walk and enjoy it. And, we've still got some things to work out with it. Would it be nice to have some entertainment out there? Yeah, we got a church next door, though. So we've got some things to work out, but that's the type of environment like that.
Well, I look at Jim's place there with the art out front and how people
Absolutely.
just sit there, they take pictures. It will be an attraction.
Yeah, and that's one of our intent too, to have art out front too. I think Mr. Fox has started something great on Main Street with what he has out there. We want to continue that down that part.
Great.
Paul, you had questions?
Yeah, if I may, a couple of comments. I think it's a very clever use of this building. It meets the housing production plan in a lot of ways, transportation, access. It's even going to reduce the water and wastewater requirements. A lot to be said here, but I'm curious, the mix that you have here have everything from 4 bunk beds to private areas. Did you do the research, a survey to find out what the needs really are, or are they more a function of what fits in the building?
I've done an unprofessional market study, which is talk to the people that we think that would be using the building and get comments from them. But we will have to do a more thorough market study in order to get any financing for the project. So that's what we have to come. But when talking to a potential,
One of the things I noticed in the drawing is you have a special egress from the basement, is there some concern about getting in and out of the building in case of an emergency?
Well, if you go to the building, John, you'll get to answer those questions too, but if you go to the building, you know, because of the site, it's a little sunk down. So in order to get out of some of those rooms in the bottom, there are light wells. Those light wells have to be of a certain size in order to exit out those rooms. We've talked to the building commissioner about those, so those need to be enlarged in order for people to get out of those rooms in case of an emergency.
You have some on the first floor, too.
Have some on the first floor?
Well, it's on the drawings, anyway.
Yeah. I mean,
I think it's a very clever use of the facility, and my compliments to the architect and others who worked on it. It's nice to use on local architects and engineers as well. The final question I had was going to be about the restaurant, but I think you've answered it, because I see the restaurant facility and the washing facility is in the basement, which requires either the steps or the elevator, but if you're having a more of a place like Coffee O or something like that, you don't have to worry about that.
and there are 2 elevators in the building. Those will probably both have to be replaced.
Well, and the kitchen for the little restaurant area is in the basement. That's where it is, so I assumed it would be a dumbwaiter, but it wasn't marked on the drawing.
No dumbwaiter.
No.
You have to go up the steps of the elevator.
But Mr. Galasso mentioned it, so
Yeah.
that's probably the plan?
No, you're correct. There's not one currently shown, and we haven't worked out the mechanics of how, if we're even going to use that for that purpose downstairs. Coffee O, Pie in the Sky, they don't really have full kitchens and stuff. We do have a little area behind that one door that could be used for instance, what we have in our cafe in San Diego, which is mostly sandwiches and soups and things like that, so it doesn't need a full kitchen. But we haven't really talked to a restaurant operator yet of who might want to go in there. So we do know that there is a grease trap there, but it's probably going to have to be replaced. That's one thing that Amy brought up too.
John, did you have questions?
No.
No?
No, Bob and I were discussing something.
Jed, I wonder if you could answer a question for me. They're here for site plan review now,
That's correct.
and I'm wondering whether they've met the requirements as far as the specific plan requirements that need to be from the licensed professionals. Have they done that?
So we're still waiting on drainage calculations, and I think Mr. Borselli spoke to that. That was going to be one of my questions, was what sort of submittal would we be anticipating? Because the board has to consider that.
Is anything else missing now?
Not to my knowledge. I believe you've got a proposed and existing site plan, you've got a landscaping plan, you've got all the floor plans and the architecturals. The only other thing I can think of would be a photometric plan to make sure that the lighting is appropriate for the entire site, but my memory serves that we might actually have one of those. I just can't remember. There's been so many plan sets that I've looked at for this property.
Yeah.
That would be the one item I could think of offhand that.
Well, in this week, looking at the drawing, some of the dimensions are missing. There were open questions about the parking because of the fire department's concerns about the turn, so we're waiting for a final drawing on that and the dimensions that would be on it.
Yeah, so there's an open question, and maybe this is the time to handle a parking conversation. Because, as we reviewed the plans, we noted that obviously they're parking within 5 feet of a property line. So that requires a special permit, as you're well familiar, from the planning board to do that. There's also a lot coverage question at hand, because they're exceeding the lot coverage. Also, as we discussed this evening, as a special permit from the planning board. So, those are going to be open questions I was going to ask the applicant.
The footprint of the building hasn't changed, and yet they're exceeding the lot coverage. How is that happening?
Well, I would ask the applicant those questions.
How are we going to reduce the lot coverage?
No, I doubt it, but what's your, by how much are you exceeding it? What is the special permit you're going to need?
Michael, do you know how much we're exceeding the lot coverage? We're not adding any square footage.
Yeah.
We're not adding to the building at all. We're living within the current structure of the building. But Michael did the calculation for lot coverage ratio.
It's argued a lot of times.
So go back to the, yeah, I can, it's back.
this one? Yes. It's existing conditions.
Yeah, I don't think I have.
So if you can see this, this is the existing lot coverages on the site by structure, 20.8, and by overall structure, paving, parking, 70.
So you're over by 3.7?
I believe 60% is allowed.
60%?
Yeah, this is redevelopment, not B.
Ah, so
It's different formula.
Right.
And the only other footprint changes that I'm aware of are a patio out front, which is impervious, which is
No,
pervious.
what I said is you're not changing the footprint. I wonder how then are you out of compliance on lot coverage? You're not increasing it, and it's just pre-existing.
Existing issue,
Right.
correct.
Pre-existing.
How many parking spaces are they changing? There's a formula for that.
So changing, my understanding is that they're proposing 61, is that correct?
What's there now?
No, 73 is there existing?
And the reason it's less,
That triggers, I think there's a number, 3 or 5. You better look it up to know whether it triggers a certain, that's not my job, but
I
I
don't
believe
follow.
there's a number like so many square footage or so many parking
Yeah,
spaces.
how many are required?
It triggers a different level of hearing.
I'm not familiar with that, but I
Well,
know
you
that.
should look at it.
well,
a
you
certain
have
number of parking
a
spaces.
bylaw that says if your use results in the need for 5 or more parking spaces, you need to come to site plan review, but we're here for site plan review.
Right.
Exactly. So one of the first
No,
questions.
my issue is I believe there's a standard for site plan review for engineering that we need to look at. That's the only issue I had in that. I'm in favor of this project, and I also, let me talk, I think there's 2 things that's really important, is the local comprehend specifically asked for this kind of development for the community use, kitchens and baths, and I heard objections to that, but that is called out in our local comprehensive plan that's been in place for a long, long time. And the other thing is, business redevelopment calls for incorporating pedestrian-friendly landscaping in front and bringing people into the site, and it specifically does that too. So it really hits home on a lot of great things that we've been trying to do. I just wanted to say something positive.
Charlotte?
Thank you. Yes, it
Charlotte?
does do all that. Yeah, Pat?
I think, but I am not sure, that pre-existing conditions, because we've had this come up before us so often, and people have gotten what they needed because it's a
That
pre-existing
might be the
condition.
case.
And the parking spaces are being reduced,
Oh.
not increased.
That's what they need to say, and if they say it, it's
Yeah,
good.
and I think that the pre-existing condition and the reuse of that pre-existing condition there is fabulous.
Well, there's a certain amount of parking spaces that are required, and they do not meet that.
Oh, I know.
And they're changing the use of the building, so that is why it also comes into play.
Ah, okay.
But that doesn't come to us.
So, right, so the change of use and the required parking triggers the site plan review. That's why they're here.
Right.
So the question before the applicant at this point is, with the parking so close to the property line, they have to consider, do they want to ask for a special permit or request a special permit or adjust the parking plan to not be within 5 feet of the property line? So we just wanted to make that clear and sort of provide that option.
I think that brings up something that we've talked about before, is that we need to look at our parking bylaw. And with things changing, like shared vehicles and things like that, we need to change the bylaw to accommodate these, because, you know, if they're gonna have shared vehicles and they're not gonna need the number of parking spaces, why should we shove something down their throats that they don't really need?
Right, particularly when the alternative is you have some attractive lighting and you have the trees.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's no accommodation being made for the specific changes that are new technology, and we ought to be looking at that.
Yeah, and to Bob's point, unfortunately, the bylaw doesn't provide for that. So-
Right, no, but we can do it.
We can give a waiver, right?
Right.
I think you can give a waiver on the requirements of submittals, but I'm not sure you can waive the parking requirements. But I can certainly dig into the bylaw to make sure that that's an accurate statement.
I don't see in here, Jed, a list of any other special permit requests, so it's just the parking
Correct. The parking we know for certain. The pre-existing lot coverage, we're going to be consulting with the building commissioner just to make sure, but I believe the indication is, as of right now, that they would need to seek a special permit.
Also, in our bylaw, you can get a reduction from parking. However, we're not sure that this qualifies for that.
Okay, so we've got an open question.
Yep.
Several layers.
Yeah.
Yes.
And time to look into it.
And I think one of the waiver we'd like to request is possibly having to do the drainage study.
Site plan review.
And we've got a pre-existing condition that's worked very well for a number of years. We have a letter from the previous owner that says Main Street flooded, but nothing came onto their property, and they never had a flood in their basement or any water in their basement. So we'd like you to consider at least us not having to spend the time and the money with doing a drainage study.
Uh-huh.
Thanks.
I think your client's just left. I think your client's just left.
No, they wanted better accommodation, so.
Is there any other questions? No, I think we're,
Madam Chair,
yes.
would you want to consider closing the hearing on this?
I don't think so, because we're going to get some more information about the parking, so let's wait until we have all the information, and then it's probably, we'll just go to the, continue to the next, to the 14th.
14?
Yeah.
First, I asked the question, I don't hear any negatives right now, and we could perhaps
We
draft
still
a
need-
positive motion and then deal with that issue as part of it.
There's still quite a
It's
few
up to
open
you.
questions.
Yeah, there's too many.
Yeah, I think
From a
it's
staff perspective.
nice idea, too early.
If everything is answered at the next meeting, then we can move to have a
Right.
positive motion drafted, so.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what
Or a
we'll
motion
work with
drafted.
Melinda and Jed over the next few weeks to try to come back to you with something clean. Not the day before the hearing, but maybe a couple of days, they have a chance to read it. And
Right, and we needed a different drawing. I mean, there are still things that are out there that are open, so we'll just continue it. But I hope you're leaving with the idea that we really like this project and admire it.
and thank you, and I appreciate you taking
Yeah.
the time this evening to listen to us. And
Yeah, there was okay, Paul has raised the issue, there were no negatives. I have a negative, and because I was not focused on the negative, I almost forgot it. The building color,
yes.
yes. I guess this is a familiar complaint, you've heard it before, with those contrasting panels breaking up the volume. What do you think of that?
From the rendering of the building, or,
No, from the building itself as you drive by it.
well, there are awnings on the building. The building's not really very visible from Main Street. We think, maybe it's me personally, that's a great piece of architecture that's different than anything else we have in our community. And how do we sort of bring that more to life? We're planning on taking off all those green awnings that are there, cleaning up the landscape around it. The cornice line needs some work. But we weren't right now thinking about doing anything than sort of what you see here, which is historically what this building was. We have been trying to find some historic pictures and actually talk to the historic folks, but we haven't been able to find any, to really see what it looked like after they built it. This is what it looked like from the architectural rendering, and as we know, that doesn't always happen in real life, so we'd like to try to find
Some years were better in architecture than others.
Yes, that's very true.
This is not one of the better years.
But a lot of times, people think that things aren't better when they first come out, end up being better.
Did that happen here?
I mean, we see that, I think, with the new Hug statute in Boston. Some people think it's worse. Some people thought the Eiffel Tower was the worst piece of architecture ever.
No, you're quite right, tastes differ, but on this particular building, even if the panels were blended better with the
Yes.
the brick,
You're talking about the panels underneath the windows?
yes.
Yes, definitely worth looking at. Yep. I know that John has some ideas about that. So we haven't agreed on those ideas yet, but I know that he has some ideas.
Oh, but they could be coming forward. That would be good.
They might. But yeah, I would agree with you. They're a little bit too harsh just the way that they are, and there's a way that we can find to.
Right.
The rest of the brick, we plan on just, cleaning. Luckily, the building doesn't leak except for one spot and stuff, and it's a flat roof that doesn't have any drainage besides it coming off the front of the building and the side of the building. So that's something we've got to look at, too. Yeah,
Okay.
I know.
That's an eclectic quality to Main Street.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Okay, so there, now you have a negative to work with. Pam?
Mike, are you
Thank
going
you.
to sit down and maybe talk with, the head of the hospital? And, I mean, I think it's going to be really important to understand the dynamics of each of the groups that may come in.
Yeah.
That you're going to want to have some distance between, just because of the scheduling and how you get there and how it's used. And I would think talking, and I'm sure you're going to do this anyway because you've probably already done some of it, but those are the things that are of a concern to me.
Sure. And I will say that Mike Kasparian, who talked to you, I think at your prior meeting, has been very helpful in organizing meetings with his members, including the hospital, including Huey, including the chief of police, including some of the restaurant operators on Main Street, and getting their comments and everything, and getting how they see they could use the facility. Because, as we all know, we go from a population of 35,000 or whatever year-round to 100-something. And that means that hospital's got to triple their staff, So I heard they're paying the traveling nurses more than $200 an hour just to get them to come here. And having some housing for them is something that they'd love to see. So we have engaged them in those discussions. They're a supporter of the project, but we'll continue those discussions with them too.
Okay, so we're going to continue this till the 14th?
Yes.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all. Okay, committee reports. Paul?
I'd just like to mention I attended the Water Quality Management Committee meeting yesterday, and there's 3 articles in the
Water
town.
quality management?
Yeah. There's 3 articles in town meeting, and I'd like to just mention what they are. One is the wastewater improvements. The costs have gone up significantly, and they asked for 24 million. They're looking for perhaps another 8 or 10 million more because of the price increases. And they showed a number of reasons why they've gone up so significantly. So they don't have the full number yet, but that'll be an increase.
Excuse me, Mr. Glasgow, could you just move it outside so we can continue our meeting? Thank you.
So that'll be a significant increase for Article 24. Article 25 is $4.5 million for the design of the Akapesky T-ticket sewer area, which was planned for some time. And the third one is Article 33, with the intended to do in-house to update the flow-neutral bylaw, because there's a lot of requirements in there that makes them have to go through hoops, and they're trying to make that a little simpler.
Are they doing anything to raise the money for the lift station that's going to help the project down at the plaza?
Did not come up. I'm not aware of it.
No.
The other thing of that meeting is there's 13 estuaries in town, obviously, far more than anybody else. And there was a report by the town on the results of the oyster beds in those areas, and it's all been very positive. He showed where they are, where the potentials are and whatnot, and it was a very, very interesting, very, very lengthy presentation, but it was over an hour, but it was a good presentation.
Thank you
By
so
Chuck
much,
Mortensen.
Paul, for going to all these meetings.
Yeah.
You bring me a lot of information. That's really great.
I'd just like to bring it up.
We appreciate it. Planning Department report.
I have nothing to report. It's been an extremely busy week, but nothing that I can think of. It's been mostly focused on applications. So, we're gearing up for some special project updates for you folks.
Right.
We promised you an update on the growth incentive zone for the Main Street or the Mr. Cod area. So we're working on that. Michaela's hard at work at finishing up the open space and rec plan, and we're looking to, go out to get some more grant funding for that. We're supporting the town's efforts to essentially figure out the parking in the downtown. We're going to be asking for some grant funding to hire a consultant to do a parking management plan for the downtown. To try and get a handle on, what's here, what's being used, et cetera. So there's a lot going on. But I don't know if you had anything to add, but that's all I have. Unless you have questions for us. Happy to answer.
Pam?
Anything going on in terms of transportation, shuttle services during the summer so people can park, in schools and then be shuttled over to the beaches?
There was an effort by a local restaurant owner, Shipwreck, Alex Kahn. He was interested in starting up a shuttle service along the ocean. I don't know where that's gone. I believe that he's in talks with the Regional Transit Authority, but I haven't received an update in quite a while. But that was a potential project of linking basically East Falmouth to downtown along the ocean. That's all I know about shuttle services.
I think we need to do, if we want to really make the downtown vibrant, people have to be able to get into town and park. And if it's a rainy day and they're not at the beaches, they're probably going to be in town. And so the shuttle would work even with that. So they can, park at one of the schools, be picked up, brought into town. I think we really need to do something because we're creating more and more venues for people to go to, which means more and more people are going to have to drive into town.
Right.
Yeah, I think you were going to be looking into whether anything's going on with short-term rentals.
Right.
With what, Charlotte?
Regulating short-term rentals.
Yes.
We hear from so many, I guess that was like the royal we, I hear so often that neighborhoods are having a problem with short-term rentals, noise, as a result of it, instability in the neighborhood. So anything doing?
So we plan to have a mini report on that for your next meeting.
Great.
So we're just going to consult with Town Management Office. I believe they've got some funding in the recommended budget as Peter Johnson Stott presented to the Select Board. So get a little bit more detail about that and bring it back to you guys.
Good. A lot of communities are moving on it. Paul?
Yeah, one other thing on committee reports. As you're aware, I attended the Transportation Management, was taken out, Transportation Committee meeting for the last 2 years. Last June, 3 of the members declined to be reappointed, and the request was to Select Board to assign more members to that committee and move forward. There's been absolutely no response to that. But one of the things I was following as part of the committee was the bridges. And next week, there's going to be 2 webinars, or at least meetings on Tuesday and Thursday about what the state is doing on the bridges. As you know, the federal government turned down the funding for this year, apparently because the state was not ready to go forward, both in costs and what they plan to do. So the update is Tuesday and Thursday of next week, and I could give you the link if you want to share it with everyone.
Okay, or why don't you send it to Jed, and he can readily share it with people, whereas I cannot.
Thank you for the reminder. I actually registered for the one on Thursday.
I did too.
So they're both virtual events.
Yeah.
And it's very easy. You just go to the MassDOT webpage, and they've got a sort of a splash page for the Canal Bridges replacement project. So you can easily register, and it's just a webinar that you can listen to.
Any other input? A motion to adjourn?
Wait a second, I've been waiting for future agenda items before I spoke out of turn. You skipped it.
I'm sorry.
I didn't want to interrupt, but I was waiting to be in order.
No, you're right, I jumped right over it. Future agenda items.
Well, I think that we should go after the last piece of low-hanging fruit that was identified when our housing study was done about 10 years ago. I think that.
Something like.
And it's the
a long time
conversion
ago.
bylaw. And
right.
I believe that could have a significant impact to additional housing. And I believe I don't know if anyone's familiar with it or not, but.
Change the date, is that what you're thinking?
Yes, I think there's 2 things I think need to be done. Change the date from 1984. to a date in the future that we all agree with. I don't know whether it's 2000 or something. But I also think there has to be a reasonable, the bylaw specifically says you can't add any more square footage. And I think maybe there could be 10 or 20% added on to it that would make it more productive.
Go to a volumetric.
To produce more housing. If it was done before I was on the planning board, but if I remember, it was done specifically to preserve big old houses that were getting torn down, and they tried to find uses for them. And if there's one on Clinton Ave, they're actually fantastic condos around town.
Right.
There's one on Gunning Point. There's just some great big old houses that have them. And I think.
It wasn't restricted by neighborhood, though.
No, it's anywhere in town.
Anywhere.
Age of the house.
It had to be built in 1984, and you couldn't add significant square footage on it. You could put porches and entranceways for egress only.
Yeah.
But you couldn't add 10% or 20%. And I think we should talk about maybe adding 10 or 20%.
Well, tell you what, Jim, why can't a little subcommittee be formed the way we did for what turned out to be Mr. Cod, and bring it to the board?
Well, yes.
What about that?
Well, I was just wanted to have it on the next agenda to discuss it, yeah.
We could do it
Charlotte,
right now.
Charlotte, what did you just say? I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, next
Remember how
agenda.
we had a subcommittee that
Yeah, next.
I think it should be on the next meeting.
we knew that we wanted to
sure
do
I won't be here,
multifamily
but
housing?
Right.
And we got up a little subcommittee that met and worked and got some other people involved and came back with what turned out to be Mr. Cod, the mixed residential and commercial development. So I'm saying, I think right this minute, people could volunteer to serve on this because it seems like you have the elements in mind. They just need to be written down and brought here to act on. We don't need
Was
more
it appropriate
steps.
to do that at this meeting? I was only bringing it up as a future agenda item.
Wasn't on the agenda.
I'm just trying to
Yeah,
stay
no,
within
we'll
the
have to put it
rules.
on the agenda.
I'd like to have it put on the agenda.
For the 28th.
For the 28th, because
For the
I won't be here the 14th, but I'd
Oh,
love
right,
to
you'll
see
be
it.
gone.
Because you may have some people from the public that might be interested
Right,
in
I
joining.
think that'll give them time.
Okay, so,
That also goes into Bobby Richards. You know, if we could do something like that, the project-based program, too.
we
Somebody-
definitely need the subcommittee to think this through. That
Well,
sounds
yes, that's
really-
why. So
Yeah.
it needs to be on the next agenda, or on the 28th
28th.
agenda.
Just so everyone, for those that are not familiar with it, it says if your house was built before 1984, you could make it a 2, 3, or a 4, if you could meet site plan and design review without adding square footage to the house. So I think that the two
Where is
things,
that in here?
it's in the conversion bylaw. Well, it was there before you changed it. I know it was there. I think,
Okay, I'll find it.
if you
It
dropped it
was.
out of it, I wasn't paying attention
We
to
could
it.
all race and try to find it.
No, but Pat, you remember.
Oh, yeah.
It was actually
It was in there.
specifically identified in our housing study that we had a huge conference
Yeah.
on it, and there was 3 areas. It was one of the low-hanging fruit, and there was something was talked about. The first thing was accessory apartment, the next thing was multifamily housing, and the third thing was the conversion bylaw.
Right, and I
So
lost
it's
track.
probably before a lot of years' time, but that should be the next thing. If we're
Yeah.
following our plan, we should go forward on working on that, and I would work on it.
You will.
I'm going to follow the agenda and
Great.
move for adjournment.
Okay,
Second.
I'll second it.
Was that to adjourn?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Done.